In this video I spent about $360 on materials and make a designer table worth $2,000. Not without hiccups, but the journey is interesting. Hi, it's Lukasz, woodworking newbie, a guy who dropped everything and decided to learn carpentry. Well, maybe I'm exaggerating a bit with dropping everything. For several years now, I had this strange feeling whenever I entered DIY stores. You probably know that feeling from childhood when you looked at the toy store windows. A thrill, a blush on your face, daydreaming. That's how I started feeling when I looked at tools. Until one day I decided to follow this path, quit my garage and transform it into a maker space. If you're anything like me, you like to create, invent, build. My professional life so far has allowed me to address these desires, but most of the things I created started to become digital. I missed the tangibility in this process, the form, the shape, the smell. 10 years ago it was different. Bringing freshly printed things from the print shop and then feeling, touching, seeing my work in context. But that's ended. Now our whole life is digital. Books are read on e-readers, newspapers, we read them on websites or watch the news on YouTube. And so it slowly progresses with every area of our life. That's why making something that has a tangible form in its own shape, weight, smell, and most importantly, serves others, brings me great satisfaction. This table has accompanied us for a decade, being a silent witness of our life. The meals consumed at it, laughter, sometimes arguments. It knows all our secrets, dreams. In the last few years, it has also become the site of my daughter's artistic efforts. Paints, markers, scissors, and other artistic expression utensils have marked their history on it. Initially, when we moved into our new home, I had grand plans for it. I ordered the oak top from a local carpenter and I wanted to make the frame and legs myself. Then, still without a clue how. Temporarily, I placed the top on the frame and legs of an old table from IKEA. And you probably know this well. Makeshift solutions are often the most long-lasting. And so, temporarily, for 10 temporary years it coexisted with us in such a temporary form. And now, having learned a bit of this carpentry craft, it's time to change its fate, to make it a beautiful central place in our home. But what should it look like? Often we don't think about it, but carpenters are designers. They must invent the form of their furniture and then make it. They must combine aesthetics with functionality. Just like every good designer. They must assess how the user will use the item and then propose a form consistent with those guidelines, which additionally must be beautiful. Form and function. At that moment, I didn't yet know how to design a table that would do what a table should do, while also being pretty, interesting, and unique. Some time ago, I stumbled upon a channel on YouTube called 4 Eyes Furniture. Chris not only has the technical skills and can create ambitious forms, but also has significant design abilities. For me, his projects are modern, but also refer to great furniture classics. And so I fell in love with an episode where he made a beautiful table. And the best way to learn the craft is to observe and copy the masters. So I decided to make his design myself. Meanwhile, I mastered a simple 3D program, Shaper 3D, where I could concretely give form to things before even turning on the tools. I decided to seam down the top from 8 cm, about 3.10 inches, to 4 cm, about 1.6 inches. However, we like a lighter form better. I decided to finish the edges of the top with a 45-degree bevel. This will refer to all the furnitures I create for our home. The frame and legs have a lot of curved lines. The legs have roundings, the frame has incisions. It looks as if the top is levitating above the legs. While I won't likely have a problem with the top, such a form for the legs is quite a challenging topic for me. To make all legs that will have the same curves, it would be best to cut them on a CNC machine. The second option is to prepare a template from which I will replicate the cut on the rotor. What you are seeing now is the cutting of the horizontal elements of the frame. I managed to combine the CNC idea with the template. It turned out that the person living a mile from me has a CNC machine and cut me templates from plywood. Unfortunately, due to a software error, everything came out 20% smaller, but that's not a problem. The curves are okay, so I trace the cutting lines from them. Then I'll manually prepare a template to exact size. So from a large oak plank, it cost me about $84, I coarsely cut 2 bases for the frame. I use a jigsaw for the curves and a planche saw for the straight lines. Of course, this is a rough cut. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the new central element of my workshop. The Crafdrew SKP L2500 workbench and wood press in one. Later in the video you will see how wonderfully it works. On my channel I recommend only products that I use and I would like to use. There is no pretense here. And this table is the Mercedes of workshop tables. Mercedes, but at the price of a Skoda. Crafdrew is a Polish company, but you can order from them and they will ship internationally. I invite you to look at their webpage. Now I'm preparing the material for the legs. I level the planks which I will then glue together. I don't want to press you too hard here for likes and subs, but if you are still here and you like the form of what I do, consider interaction. Subscribe to the channel, add a comment or a like, it helps me a lot in developing this channel, not to mention the huge dose of motivation I receive from you. Now glue up. Just see how easy it is to prepare a glued panel on this table. Pure poetry. Each clamp runs on 2 rails. All elements are bearing mounted. Everything works very smoothly. You can set the clamps where you want them. You lock them with pins and they stay in place. The clamps have rails. All are mounted by bolts. These bolts additionally have magnets and stay in place so they don't fall out anywhere. Everything down to the smallest detail is well thought out here. The table is perforated. You can use clamps or other tools that can be mounted in these holes. It is very convenient not only for a workshop table, but also for preparing glued panels. I set the clamps for the length I want, I lock them, insert my material, clamp it and done. This table also has the option to be set upright. So it's perfect for a small workshop. I can prepare the glued panel, set it vertically to the side and in the center prepare other things.
Trying to sip on some wine, falling out of line, feeling like I'm running out of time. Every day the same because I'm looking for a sign instead of chasing it. The good or the bad, I'm embracing it. If you make it bad, yeah, then you gotta lay in it. Reality.
Compensating clamps work so that they not only clamp the material widthwise, but also press from the top to minimize the effect of moving the boards vertically. This saves a lot of time later in leveling or sanding, not to mention the quality of glue up. It's much better.
Breadwinners eating Sunday dinner by my grandmoms. Gotta spend time with the fam when you have time. And I just wanna thank God, cause he done a great job in molding me to be a better man, just for mankind.
We was young and dumb, but that feeling never faded. Knew that you was the one, that's why I never downgraded. Depression caught up to me and it made me isolated. The only one I was ever comfortable around naked.
I leave it overnight to dry, but the magic of YouTube allows me to show you the result right away. As you can see, the gluing process in these clamps is fabulously simple. I don't know how you can further reduce the amount of stress during gluing, but having the right tools is probably a priority. Now I clean the boards from glue and level them to the desired thickness. Recently, I was talking to a friend about dust collectors, and he wondered how I manage without a professional dust collector. I'll tell you that for basic tools like sander, jigsaw or so, it's not a problem at all. The worst are two tools, a thicknesser and a jointer. But I must admit that this Festool separator you see here really does the job. It's not perfectly clean, but it's very decent. I was very surprised. Of course, its price is a bit terrifying for amateurs. Then, with an adjustable square, I take the angle from the template and mark the legs on the boards. This is always a process that causes a bit of fear in amateur. As you mark it, so shall you cut it. I always fear that I'll mark it wrong and then all the work goes to waste. However, spending the right amount of time to do it well pays off. It's like preparing for a big project. If you plan everything well, then everything else goes smoothly. Okay, marking done. Now I'm getting ready to cut the pieces. Of course, it's a rough cut first, because the pieces will be fine-tuned from the template later. After I roughly cut the legs, I fine-tune the angle on the miter saw and proceed to more precise cutting of the frame. Final leveling of the proper thickness, and then I prepare for joining the legs and the frame with domino joints. I choose the thickest domino I could use in the DF500, 10mm one. I change the bit, set the machine, measure the position and make the slots. A dry fit to check if everything fits. Yeah, it does. It fits tightly just as it should. Good domino. After all this, I have to repeat everything once more for the other leg. Oh, and here's where those years of practice come in handy. Using CA glue, I attach wedges to make sure the clamps press the leg well. CA glue is strong to a certain extent and can later be easily detached without tearing. Using professional terminology here, you just have to whack it with a hammer. I add a liberal amount of wood glue and join the legs. Somewhere in a tutorial video about domino, the guy showed that the dominoes themselves, speaking professionally, should be smeared in glue. Since then, that's what I do. I don't know why, but later peeling off dried glue from my hands gives me a kind of a weird satisfaction. Question whether it does for you too. Gluing always stresses me out, but here it went quite smoothly. What annoys me the most is disorder in work or in the workshop. If there's disorder, I don't feel good there. But sometimes it happens that in the heat of work, you're not able to keep control over the things you use. So that's why it looks as it does here. On the other leg, I had a bit more play in the domino. I milled it wrong, so I added more clamps on the sides. And here's an example of a terrible market clamp. Never ever again. I've already ordered proper clamps. Enough problems. Two legs glued, a little sanding and a small repair. I didn't notice that one side of the board had a chip, but that's why I like working with wood, because everything can be fixed practically without a trace. I glue in a small wedge match in color and grain to the wood. Once it dries, I'll trim and sand it. There won't be a trace. I fill the gaps with fast-drying black putty, and in 15 minutes I can start sanding. I like resin, but the working time with resin is very tough. It takes a terribly long time for it to harden. But with this putty, it's like a zip, zap, zoop, and ready. Sorry, Jason. Now it's time to prepare the precise template for routing the curves. So I use a template to make a template. Template inception. Remember how I said at the beginning that my templates came out 20% too small? Well, now is the process of enlarging the template by 20% more. And I'm getting the final cutting on the legs. On double-sided tape I attach the template to the wood and use a copying router bit to route the legs halfway. Then I use that routed trace as a template to finish routing the legs. I might be using the word template too much. Template! When the glued piece has dried, I trim it with a Japanese saw and sand everything. Legs are ready. Now I'm preparing the cross connectors. Here I use some ugly oak boards. I just bought a slab cut-off from a sawmill for $24 and cut it up. They won't be visible because they'll be under the top. I evened them out and then glued them into one piece. This way I save in quantity. The boards were 9 cm wide, about 3.5 inches. But I needed 13, about 5 inches. It will be easier for me to cut the right width from one piece later. Once I've cut them up, I prepare a template for making the slots. I cut a rectangle with a jigsaw, then even it out on a spindle sander. I format the boards to the same length. If somebody wonders, I just did not turn on the vacuum. It just looks better in slow motion. And then the same thing 10 times. I cut a rectangle in the board, apply the template, and even out the edges with a rotor bit. The connectors are ready. I'm cutting all the legs to the same length. Now it's time to make the slots to connect them to the frame. And here you can see unplanned weather conditions. This is how when you work in storm. When it settled down, I started working again. Domino in action. I racked my brain before figuring out how to do this. But somehow I managed without any mess up. One side is ready, now the same on the other leg of the frame. I bevel some edges and round others.
Hey, look. Labels blowing up my line, it got me missing calls. Told her you ain't gotta hit me till you licking. Feel like ZVF, baby, I'll be cooler than the mink weather. Make a Coke bottle, give me brain.
The most critical moment has come. I need to glue everything together. I wonder whether to glue it all at once or divide the gluing into 2 stages. I think I'll split into 2. It will be safer. I also don't have glue with a long open time.
I've been kick pushing on my grind since the pro skate. I don't do a figure that I'm pro hate. Chilling in the cut like a scab ready to peel. You ain't gotta like it, I promise you gotta deal with us. Used to be friendly, I'm off that and I'm on business. All I've been seeing is flawed jewelry and fake digits. So when I tell them I'm the coldest, it ain't superstition. Every time you see me, you gon' find me in a new position. You mean?
Okay, I managed to glue it. I sent to a 150 grit. I finish everything with Rubio Monocoat Cotton White oil. Don't like to talk about that, I like to do it. So while these other hungry going through it, you see me thumbing through these hundreds getting to it. I told her fat, do you have mag knees? I'ma need that right after that, please. Bet you leave way before my bread leave. Got them googling the caption trying to everything except one edge. It is finished with black stain and oiled with clear oil. A small accent. It's time for the demolition. I take the toys and move to my living room. I don't have to carry the whole top to the workshop, but just cut it into boards on the spot. The Festool's extraction works efficiently, so there is a microscopic amount of mess. I cut in the places of the old gluing. As you can see, The top only appears to be thick because it had inserts on the edges. The middle of the top is 4 centimeters, about 1.6 inches. Ah, you might ask in the letters. Lukasz, why the heck are you cutting it? It was enough just to cut those inserts and you have a ready top. Yes, but unfortunately the top was not reinforced in any way, and over 10 years the corners went down dramatically. It turned into a boat. I could have tried to straighten it in clamps, but it's quicker and better to glue it anew, and then reinforce it from underneath with C-profiles. It shouldn't bend anymore. The material for such a top is about $240. Of course, it depends where you buy it. I usually drive to a sawmill in the mountains to the source, without any intermediaries. I managed to carry out this process smoothly. Now I cut off those inserts and start leveling the boards. After finishing this process, it's time to make the glue up. Without this table, I probably couldn't have done it. But with it in place, everything went smoothly and efficiently.
Look, saint versus sinners, the poor versus riches, top ramen place versus 5-star dinners. Wonder why?
Now I cut the sides at 45 degrees and bevel the edges.
Came from broken homes, trying to break the old traditions. Left my old ways for my future acquisitions. I know, no such thing as playing both sides. I know, life is better in the dope ride. I know, the water better in the low tide. Music better amplified, staying down for upsides. I know, no such thing as playing both sides. I know, the life is
and
better in
it's
the dope
time
ride.
for heavy sanding.
The water better in the low tide.
I go with it
Music
to a
better amplified,
150
staying down for
grit.
upsides. I know.
And just like the legs, I finish with Rubio Monocoat Cotton White oil.
Me, I sip a little bit, maybe a little more, just trying to keep a score. 2 cups in and knowing my liver sore, and knowing I'm into soar, and knowing I'm in for more. Rewriting destiny right when I hit record. Patching up the trauma, these lyrics is neat.
In the frame, I mill holes for mounting the top. I'll use domino for that. Here's how. about allowing the top for seasonal work. The top will expand and contract on the sides. How awesome is to have a neighbor who will lend a hand if needed, or two, and a fan of the channel too.
Life is better in the dope ride, I know. The water better in the low tide. Music better amplify, staying down for upsides, I know. No such thing as playing both sides.
I drill holes for the double-threaded inserts underneath the top, then screw them in and attach the top to the frame. Oh wow, this was one of the biggest jobs I've done. Honestly, I gave myself a 70% chance of success. But it turned out well, I think. Right? Let me know in the comments what you think. Thank you for being here with me until the end. See you next time. And subscribe!